I'm Cheryl Chumley. This is Bold and Blunt, giving you a Christian conservative view of news, politics, culture, and events. Gal Kalev, thank you so much for being back on Bold and Blunt Video. We are both in Jerusalem today, both in Israel at separate locations, but I'll meet up with you again later. Let's talk about what's going on right now with the war in Israel, insofar as what America is doing to influence on-ground military and politics activities. So talk about the resolution. Let's talk about Chuck Schumer and so forth.
Yeah, we were stunned yesterday. I mean, at least the people who are not involved maybe in day-to-day negotiations with the American administration by U.S. Position in the UN, basically telling Israel to stop, which has been consistent with the rhetoric that we've been hearing over the last few weeks. But still, this is in the UN, in the Security Council, and this, to me, is not just sort of a departure in terms of throwing Israel under the bus a little bit more. But this is really could symbolize a departure in the U.S. Treatment to the war on terrorism, because, we have to take a second to kind of recognize what's happening here. Israel has been attacked by Hamas. Israel is fighting back Hamas. Everybody says, go ahead and fight Hamas. But now that we're close to victory and Hamas is basically in one place in Rafah, we've been hearing all those calls from the United States and the world to stop, which is exactly what Hamas wants. Hamas basically pleads to the world, the only way for Hamas to survive and to commit more October 7th, to keep their hostages, to rape more women, the only way to survive is if the world tells Israel to stop. And this is exactly what the United States is doing through this UN resolution and through what Biden is saying and the others.
And Chuck Schumer, Senator Chuck Schumer, who spoke from the Senate floor a few days ago, basically calling for new leadership in Israel. How is that being received, not just by the Israel people, but also by the enemies of Israel?
Oh, this is a great gift to the enemies because, look, everybody that I spoke to in Israel on the left and on the right agrees that what Chuck Schumer switched teams. That's what one person told me on the left. Now, he said like about 50% or so of Israelis, as a natural kind of in politics, won't be replaced, but they still support Bibi's policy. There's a consensus in Israel for the war, for our ability to continue the war, for our ability to defeat Hamas. We're united in this. So there's politics. People want to be in government, but there's no, So when Chuck Schumer says, and Biden says, yeah, Biden said the same. He supports Chuck Schumer. When he says replace Bibi, with who? Are we not with Ilhan Omar, with Thomas Friedman of the New York Times? They're not running. They're not, as far as I know, a candidate for Israeli prime minister. So the person that in Chuck Schumer's or Biden's mind will replace Bibi would have the exact same policies. We also want to survive. We also want to defeat Hamas. We also want to go into Rafah. That is a consensus in Israel. And that's, by the way, in spite of millions of dollars campaign that has been throwing at us from the outside, to try to change that. Israelis are united and resolute to continue this war. So Chuck Schumer's calls are problematic, but they're also problematic about, he's inciting against the Jews. It's astonishing because yesterday was Purim, the holiday of Purim, where we read the book of Esther. And the holiday of Purim is about the attempt to obliterate the Jewish nation, our miraculous survival. And core to that was the accusation by the enemies of the Jews that the Jews are a pariah nation. And we heard the same thing last century in Germany. And here comes Chuck Schumer on the floor of the Senate, which is a holy place, in my view, and does the same thing. He accuses the Jewish state of being a pariah, opposed by the rest of the world. And then he also accuses Israeli Jews of being bigots because he defines those who oppose the idea of a Palestinian state as being bigots. And that is the vast majority of Israelis on the left and the vast majority of Israelis on the right. That is the vast majority of Israelis that want to replace Bibi. So again, you're accusing us of Bibi. By the way, this is also many Americans. I remember Bill Clinton. Is Bill Clinton a bigot according to Schumer? Because back then when he ran for president, he wrote a book and dedicated, I think, a chapter explaining why we should all oppose the idea of a Palestinian state. So, there is this very worrisome, on the one hand, those who want to replace Bibi says, okay, we got some help. But on the other hand, this is not the kind of help we want by somebody that used to be a friend of us. And now he's extending and participating in the ideological assault against the Jewish state. And I'll add one more thing, if I may, is that, if you take Schumer and the UN thing, I think that does represent a departure in U.S. policy, not towards Israel, but towards the U.S. Because remember, years back, the slogan was, "You're either with us or against us." This was the motto in the war on terrorism: "You're either with us or against us." And now the motto seems to be fluidity. So yes, we will support Israel to some degree. We provide weapons, but then when Hamas asked, is dependent on us to stop Israel for defeating it, then we will basically support Hamas. And also in rhetoric, the inciting rhetoric, and also using Hamas talking points. For example, this whole idea that they use about the 30,000 deaths in Gaza. Every civilian death is tragic, but most experts agree that this is a number. Everybody agrees this is a number provided by Hamas, but people agree this is an inflated number that includes Hamas fighters, that includes natural death, and includes all sorts of other distortion. And this is the number that Biden is using to explain, why he needs Israel to stop. So this might be much bigger than about Israel and Bibi. This might be a departure in the way that the United States look at the war on terrorism, and in the idea that when we have hostages held by a terrorist organization, that we will do whatever it takes to rescue them. When the United States tells us to stop, when the United States weakens our ability to do that, that to me is more a departure in U.S. policy and principles than it is in the U.S.-Israel relations.
I do agree that it seems to be a departure in normal policy. And I just want to make the distinction between the Joe Biden administration and the previous Donald Trump administration, and the hoped for in America, at least by many in America, for the next Donald Trump administration, when things would, I think, the policy then would switch back to one that's much more in the pro-Israel camp. Do you agree with that? Donald Trump back in the White House, the policy goes back to pro-Israel.
So I, as you know, try to be non-political in my analysis. But it's set. I mean, like you said, it was a very different policy before Biden, and as Trump, stands with Israel now as we go through this. I hear from my friends in the Democratic and progressive circles this rhetoric of, yes, we're throwing Israel under the bus, but for them, this is all about the campaign to re-elect Joe Biden. This is the most important thing, because in their narrative, if Trump wins, it's the end of the world. So, yeah, we're throwing Israel under the bus. It might be the end of Israel, but, if the end of the world comes, then it's Israel. It's end of Israel as well. So I think there is a consensus in one thing amongst everybody you speak to, that the actions of the Biden administration, the inciting rhetoric of Schumer, of Blinken, who says Israel is dehumanizing the Palestinians, just like we were accused a century ago of dehumanizing the Europeans. That incite, everything is about the campaign. So both people on the left and on the right in the United States and Israel view this as part of the campaign to re-elect Joe Biden. But this is a real world here, and we have a war. We have a war on terrorism where soldiers are dying. And this is, Israeli soldiers are not dying for the campaign to re-elect Joe Biden. We are dying for the survival of Israel, for the survival of the Jewish nation, for the survival of Schumer and Blinken and everybody, all Americans. This is the active front of the world war against terrorism. And I think the United States should stand with us and not try to stop us in defeating Hamas.
Which, speaking to that, it was interesting because, I arrived in Israel yesterday, and last night at my hotel, which is in Jerusalem, I heard booming in the background. And, because I'm an American, at first I didn't really think anything of it. And then it dawned on me, oh, hey, I'm in Israel where an active war is taking place. And that's sort of a big wake-up call to people who don't live in Israel and understand this is what you guys go through every day of your lives, and especially since October 7th. And just to go toward that point, though, of what I noticed, Purim was taking place when I arrived yesterday, and I saw widespread celebrations, which was very inspirational to me, even though I did see empty chairs put out as a recognition of the hostages that are still in Hamas's grasp.
Absolutely. We are not going to let the terrorists win. We are going to continue to celebrate Purim. We're celebrating in Purim the miracle that God gave us to survive against the enemies back then in Persia. And we are resolute. Our prime minister, opposition leaders all made it clear that, not, we appreciate and love the United States and pray for, even for Israeli Jews, pray for the success of any president of the United States. But, when they tell us to stop and when they tell us to compromise our ability to fight, we take that into consideration, but we will do whatever it takes to win this war and to protect Israel. That is the role of the government. So with all the risk, everything needs to be taken into consideration, potential actions by the United States, which is, it's hard for me to say the other side here, but, we made it clear that we will continue to fight. We will continue to celebrate Purim because we are celebrating every moment of our life here. And the events of the last few months are a reminder that, I have to state the obvious, that this should not be taken for granted, because the Jewish nation is now under an extreme assault, both the unprecedented assault by Hamas, but also the ideological assault coming from the West, the attempt to obliterate the Jewish nation through incitement and through potential political actions. And we are a nation of believers. And as you saw in the celebration yesterday, we will celebrate life. And we are certain that we will prevail both in the physical assault coming from Hamas and the ideological assault coming from the West, and sadly, including from elements of the administrations.
Let's just finish up with this one question, because it was interesting to me. Another woman I was speaking with yesterday in Israel told me that Israel, the Jewish people, feel very much alone right now. And I wondered if that's new because of policies coming from this administration, or if it's just something that pops up throughout Israel's history. How do you respond to that? Does Israel feel very alone in the world?
Yes, we do, and therefore we're very, very heartened by support that we're getting from, I'm sure, many of you and from many of your viewers and readers and from other people in the United States. But that is in part because we are feeling alone. The sense of Israeli or the Jewish nation feeling alone has been with us, through our exile years of the last 2,000 years. And in Israel, we knew that. But one would think that after what happened on October 7th, the atrocious murder of 1,400 Israeli Jews, the rape of women, beheading, burning alive of children, that there's going to be some recognition. This has nothing to do with a two-state solution. This didn't happen in a settlement. This happened in Israel proper, per everybody's narrative. And still, we have somehow become the villain here. Israel is fighting Hamas in Gaza, introducing military technologies that saves and minimize civilian casualties that have never been introduced before. I talk about it with people in the U.S., with friends in the U.S. military. What Israel is doing to protect civilians in Gaza is unprecedented. And still, and we're fighting an active threat that want to obliterate us. They say they want to obliterate us, and they take action in that. And still, somehow, we're getting, the world. First it was the media, then it was the UN that says, well, it didn't happen in a vacuum. You Jews do all kind of bad things. And now the administration, our best friend, the United States, having this vote in the UN, calling us to stop, our war in Gaza. Schumer accusing us of being a pariah, of being bigots. Blinken accusing us of dehumanization. That, by the way, he said that the greatest poison in our common well is dehumanization, which he accuses us of doing. So now we're poisoning the wells again, I guess. So yeah, we feel alone because, we're being attacked. There's an attempt to destroy the Jewish nation. And instead of the, conscious people in the world, coming and saying we're with you, we're very disappointed by, reactions in the Biden administrations and others. But at the same time, as I said, we have friends with a lot of support in the Muslim world. We have support amongst Arabs. We have certainly support among evangelicals. I've talked to European friends who are, with us. So we understand that it's not, that we have a lot of support. And we also understand that there's politics involved. But again, politics, this is a war for our survival. There were politics involved in Nazi Germany also. There was politics involved throughout previous episodes to destroy the Judaism. There was politics involved in Spain when there was a decision to basically deport and then liquidate the Jews out of Spain. So politics, okay, but, we are under attack. And I just hope that the administration changes course and switches from this fluidity, from this fluid policy of sometimes we support Israel and sometimes we support Hamas, to standing with American principles, going back to the idea that in the war on terrorism, you're either with us or against us, and stand with us, with Israel, as we are fighting the Western world's fight against terrorism.
Well said. Politics matter, but principles matter more. And on this, I mean, people are dying who are innocent. So, Gal Kalev, it's always great to speak with you, author of Judaism 3.0, columnist for the Jerusalem Post, and I will see you soon on the ground.
Absolutely.
Thanks.